My name is Elara Vance. I'm 32 years old, a lead architect at Horizon Global, one of the most prestigious urban development firms in the world. And tomorrow I'll be sitting across from my father and older brother in a high-stakes bid presentation for the city's new waterfront project. Only they have no idea I'm the lead on Horizon's competing proposal. What would you do if your own family treated you like you were invisible? I was about to show them exactly how visible I could be. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Now, let me take you back to how this all began. Growing up in Oak Haven, Connecticut, Julian and I were inseparable as children. Only 2 years apart, we spent endless hours designing imaginary cities with building blocks in the living room, meticulously drawing intricate maps of our backyard adventures, and even staging elaborate construction projects with overturned buckets and sand in the sandbox. Our mother, Eleanor, a quiet woman who always seemed to defer to my father, would bring us lemonade, and our father, Arthur Vance, would occasionally watch us, a rare, almost indulgent smile on his face, before disappearing into his study, the hallowed domain of Vance and Sons architects. Those early memories were filled with a shared, unbridled creativity, a mutual understanding that transcended words. They were warm, safe, uncomplicated. The shift began subtly, an almost imperceptible widening of the chasm between us. When we entered high school, Julian joined the basketball team, following in my father's footsteps as a popular athlete with an easy charm. He excelled on the court, drawing crowds and accolades. I, meanwhile, gravitated toward the art studio and the nascent computer-aided design classes, spending hours immersed in digital blueprints and structural algorithms. Our parents attended every one of Julian's games, cheering loudly from the stands with other parents and neighborhood friends, their faces beaming with pride as he scored another basket or led the team to victory. My architecture club meetings, my coding competitions, my late nights hunched over design software. They'd usually have something come up or arrive late, missing my presentations entirely. "Sports build character, Elara," my father would often say, clapping Julian on the shoulder, his voice resonating with pride. "That computer stuff. Just a hobby, Vanessa. You'll grow out of it." He never saw it as anything more. He saw Julian as the natural heir to Vance and Sons, the one who possessed the Vance drive, a phrase he used to describe a blend of ruthlessness and charisma, qualities he believed were essential for a successful architect, qualities he thought I lacked. I didn't grow out of it. Instead, I earned a scholarship to MIT, where I majored in architectural design with a minor in computer science, pushing the boundaries of what was considered traditional architecture. Julian, meanwhile, attended our father's alma mater on a partial athletic scholarship, graduating with a business degree that he barely earned with C-average grades. During family holiday gatherings, conversations revolved almost exclusively around Julian's fraternity adventures, his latest basketball stats, and his plans to join Powell Construction. No, wait, Vance and Sons after graduation. My academic achievements, my groundbreaking final projects, my internships at innovative design studios, were acknowledged with polite nods, a fleeting, "That's nice, dear," before someone, usually my mother, changed the subject to something everyone could relate to. It was always about Julian. Always. The casual dismissal became a constant, dull throb beneath my skin. After graduation, I worked 80-hour weeks at a cutting-edge tech startup in Boston that specialized in smart city infrastructure, learning everything I could about the industry from the ground up. I devoured every book, attended every conference, and networked relentlessly. My passion for sustainable, future-forward design burned brighter than ever. Meanwhile, Julian joined Vance and Sons, the family business my grandfather had started and my father had expanded into a regional powerhouse. Julian was immediately given a management position, a shiny new office, and a significant salary, despite having a business degree he barely earned and a distinct lack of practical experience in architectural design. "It's about practical experience, Elara, not just book smarts," my mother explained, her tone defensive, during a rare Sunday dinner visit. "Julian understands how the real world works. He's got that Vance drive." The irony wasn't lost on me. My years of intensive study and real-world application were dismissed as book smarts, while Julian's inherited position was framed as practical experience. Starting Horizon Global. 28, I took the biggest risk of my life. I cashed in every penny of my meager savings, secured a terrifyingly large small business loan, and founded Horizon Global. I believed in a future where architecture wasn't just about constructing buildings, but about designing integrated, intelligent environments. I envisioned cities that breathed, that adapted, that served their inhabitants with seamless technology and sustainable practices. The first 2 years were brutal. I converted my one-bedroom apartment into an office space, sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room, the faint hum of servers my constant lullaby. Ramen noodles became both breakfast and dinner, often cold, as I poured every penny, every ounce of energy into the business. There were days I wondered if I'd made a catastrophic mistake, days I was so exhausted, I could barely see the screen in front of me. When I called home during that period, conversations were brief, almost clipped. "I'm worried about you, honey," my mother would say, her voice laced with thinly veiled anxiety. "There's always a position at your father's company if this doesn't work out. It's stable." They never offered to invest, never asked about my business plan in detail, never seemed to believe I could succeed on my own terms. Their concern always felt like a polite suggestion to abandon my ambition and return to the familiar, safe, and utterly unfulfilling path they had laid out for me at Vance & Sons. Then came the breakthrough. Horizon Global developed a revolutionary smart city infrastructure management platform that attracted attention from several major corporations looking to modernize their urban developments. Suddenly, I was hiring employees, talented architects, engineers, and software developers who shared my vision. We moved into a real office space, a sleek, minimalist design I had personally overseen, and I was fielding calls from investors who had previously ignored my emails. The tide was turning. It was during this upswing that Julian met Cassandra Thorne at a regional industry gala. Cassandra was the only daughter of Marcus Thorne, the owner of Thorne Holdings, a national commercial real estate development company worth billions. Their courtship was fast and flashy, punctuated by vacations to the Swiss Alps and weekend trips to the Hamptons. My parents were ecstatic. "Marcus has taken quite a shine to Julian," my mother gushed during one of our monthly phone calls. "He's introducing him to all the right people. This relationship could really take the family business to new heights." The irony wasn't lost on me. While my own business achievements, built from the ground up, were treated as a curious hobby, Julian's relationship was celebrated as a strategic business move, a golden ticket to the upper echelons of the industry. 6 months into their relationship, Julian and Cassandra announced their engagement. The Thorne and Vance families merged their social circles, with my parents suddenly attending exclusive country club events and charity galas they'd previously dismissed as pretentious or beyond their reach. Meanwhile, through completely separate channels, Thorne Holdings had been searching for a new technological solution to their increasingly complex urban planning and management issues. Their head of innovation, Dr. Eris Thorne, Marcus's younger, far more forward-thinking brother, found Horizon Global through an industry conference where I had presented our platform. He had no idea about the family connection when he reached out. After 3 months of rigorous demonstrations, stringent security audits, and intense negotiations, Thorne Holdings signed a $30 million contract with Horizon Global. It was the largest deal in my company's history, one that would allow us to expand internationally and develop entirely new product lines for resilient, intelligent cities. I mentioned the contract to my parents during our weekly call, a quiet, almost hopeful mention, hoping they might finally acknowledge my success. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, her voice preoccupied. "Did you get the invitation to Julian and Cassandra's engagement party? It's at the Thorne estate. Marcus has his own vineyard on the property." 2 weeks later at the engagement party, I met Marcus Thorne for the first time. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and the confident, almost regal posture of a man accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. "So, you're the brilliant mind behind Horizon Global," he said, shaking my hand firmly. His grip surprisingly strong. Eris says your platform blew our tech department away. He tells me your software will save us millions in the first year alone, streamlining our entire urban development process. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. We're excited about the partnership, I replied, my voice steady despite the slight tremor of disbelief at his directness. Please call me Marcus. And we must set up a proper dinner soon. I'd love to hear more about where you see technology heading in our industry. Before I could respond, my mother appeared at my elbow, her eyes wide with surprise, a nervous smile fixed on her face. You two have met? She asked, looking between us, her voice a little too high-pitched. Just now, I replied, a subtle defiance in my tone. Marcus was kind enough to compliment our software. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly. Wait, Vance. You're Julian's sister. He never mentioned his sister ran Horizon Global. An uncomfortable silence followed, thick with unspoken implications. My mother laughed nervously, a brittle sound. Oh, Elara has always been our little computer genius, she said, as if explaining away a child's quirky hobby, her hand fluttering dismissively in my direction. Julian focuses more on the construction side of things like his father. He's the practical one. Marcus looked confused but quickly recovered his composure. A faint smile touched his lips. Well, apparently genius runs in the family. Just in different directions. This is a remarkable coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence that my brother had never mentioned my company to his future father-in-law. It was a deliberate omission. My success didn't fit the narrative Julian had created about himself as the sole family achiever, the chosen heir to the Vance legacy. My independent accomplishments, especially one as significant as this, would have undermined his carefully constructed image. Despite this glaring revelation, a stubborn spark of hope flickered within me. Perhaps Julian and Cassandra's wedding might be a turning point. Perhaps the undeniable evidence of my success through the Thorne contract, a deal of this magnitude, would finally earn me the respect I'd worked so hard to achieve from my own family. I spent weeks selecting the perfect outfit, a tailored forest green dress that projected both elegance and authority, a subtle nod to the sustainability principles woven into Horizon Global's ethos. I even arranged for Elias Thorne, Marcus Thorne's nephew and a respected venture capitalist I'd been dating for 3 months, to accompany me. His presence would serve as a welcome anchor in what I knew would be turbulent family waters. Are you sure you want me there, Elara? Elias asked over dinner the week before the wedding, his brow furrowed with concern. From everything you've told me about your family dynamics, it sounds like it might be stressful. That's exactly why I want you there, I admitted, meeting his steady gaze. Having someone who sees me for who I actually am, who values my work and my perspective, will help me keep perspective. It's like having a shield against their blindness. The night before the wedding, I called Julian, wanting to connect, hoping for some semblance of brotherly warmth before the chaos of the event. Hey, just wanted to say I'm really happy for you, I said when he answered, trying to inject genuine affection into my voice. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks, sis, he replied, sounding distracted, the usual edge in his voice softened by what I hoped was wedding stress. It's crazy here. Cassandra's got the wedding planner on speed dial, and Marcus keeps adding people to the guest list. Anything I can help with? Nah, we've got it covered. A pause, then he cleared his throat. Listen, about the seating arrangements. Yes, I prompted, a sudden knot forming in my stomach. Nothing. Just, we've had to make some last-minute changes with all the additions, but it's handled. Completely handled. See you tomorrow, okay? As I hung up, I felt a familiar twinge of unease, a premonition I tried desperately to ignore. Pushed it aside. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow finally I would be seen. The Thorne estate sprawled across 50 acres of meticulously manicured gardens, with views of the glistening Atlantic Ocean in the distance. Cars, a parade of luxury vehicles that probably cost more than most people's homes, lined the winding driveway. Elias whistled low as we pulled up in my sleek electric sedan, a subtle protest against the ostentation surrounding us. You didn't mention this was going to be quite so extravagant, he said, adjusting his tie, a wry smile playing on his lips. I didn't know, I admitted, my eyes widening at the sheer scale of it all. This is my first time at the Thorne estate too. A valet in a crisp uniform opened my door with a practiced, deferential smile. Welcome to the Thorne Vance wedding, ma'am. The main house was a grand Federalist-style mansion with towering columns and symmetrical wings extending from either side, a testament to old money and understated power. A string quartet played softly near an ornate marble fountain where guests in formal attire mingled, champagne flutes in hand. White roses and orchids adorned every surface, their subtle fragrance mixing with the crisp, salty air from the nearby ocean. Elara! My mother's voice, a little too loud, carried across the garden. She approached in a shimmering pale blue dress that she'd mentioned purchasing specifically for the occasion during 3 separate phone calls. You're here. And who is this? Mom, this is Elias Thorne, I said, a slight emphasis on his last name. Elias, my mother, Elara Vance. Elias extended his hand with a warm, genuine smile. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vance. You have a lovely family. Thank you, she replied, her eyes quickly assessing him, taking in his expensive suit, his confident demeanor, before turning back to me, her smile tightening. Elara, your father is by the bar with Marcus and some of the key investors. You should come say hello. She didn't wait for a response before turning, expecting us to follow her lead like obedient children. She seems nice, Elias whispered, his tone gently teasing, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Just wait, I murmured back, preparing myself for the inevitable. My father stood in a tight circle of men in dark suits, all laughing at something Marcus Thorne had just said. When he spotted me, his smile faltered for just a moment before recovering, morphing into a practiced, almost dismissive grin. There's my girl, he said, giving me a quick, one-armed hug that felt more like a pat on the head. And who's this young man? After introducing Elias again, I turned to Marcus Thorne, who greeted me with considerably more enthusiasm and respect than my own father. Elara, the woman of the hour. I was just telling these gentlemen about how your software is revolutionizing our operations. 3 months in, and we're already seeing unprecedented results. The men in the circle regarded me with new interest, their previous expressions of polite disinterest replaced by keen assessment. You're behind the Horizon system? Asked an older man with a distinguished gray beard, his voice betraying a hint of surprise. Marcus hasn't stopped talking about it. Says it's saving Thorne Holdings a fortune in logistics and project management alone. Before I could respond, my father cleared his throat, a theatrical sound that always signaled his need to interject and reassert control. Well, Elara always did have a knack for computers. Julian's the one who introduced her to Marcus, didn't you know? Always looking out for his little sister. The blatant lie hung in the air between us, a noxious cloud of falsehood. Marcus Thorne's eyebrows rose slightly, a flicker of understanding in his eyes, but he said nothing to contradict my father. Elias's hand, resting lightly on the small of my back, gave a reassuring squeeze. Actually, I began, my voice clear and steady, but I was interrupted by the dramatic appearance of the bride herself. Cassandra Thorne floated toward us in a cloud of white designer silk, her blonde hair arranged in an elaborate updo adorned with tiny diamond clips that caught the sunlight. Her smile was wide, almost blinding, perfected by years of society events. Elara, you came, she exclaimed, air-kissing both my cheeks, her gaze flicking over my carefully chosen forest green dress with the barest hint of a dismissive smile. And in green. How practical. Though I thought I mentioned the family was wearing pastels for the photos. You didn't actually, I replied evenly, refusing to rise to the bait. But congratulations, Cassandra. Everything looks beautiful, doesn't it? Daddy spared no expense, she beamed, linking her arm through Marcus's. Julian's getting ready with his groomsmen. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, landed on Elias with unexpected interest. And who might this be? After introductions, Cassandra's demeanor warmed noticeably. Elias Thorne. Of Thorne Capital. Why, Daddy's mentioned your firm before. You really must join us at the family table for the reception. Elias's hand found the small of my back again. His touch a silent reassurance. Thank you, Cassandra, but I'll be sitting with Elara, of course. Of course, of course. Cassandra's perfect smile tightened, a barely perceptible tremor at the corners of her mouth. Speaking of which, I should check with the wedding planner about the final seating arrangements. So many last-minute changes, you know how it is. She glided away, a vision of white silk and false sincerity. Elias leaned close to my ear. Is it my imagination, or did the temperature just drop 20 degrees? Just wait, I murmured, bracing myself. The ceremony itself was elaborate but impersonal, with a famous string quartet, a celebrity officiant, and vows that sounded like they'd been written by a publicist. Julian looked handsome but nervous in his tuxedo, his eyes rarely meeting Cassandra's during their exchange of vows. Afterward, guests were directed to a massive tent setup on the lawn for the reception. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over dozens of round tables draped in white linen and centered with towering floral arrangements. Let's find our seats, I suggested to Elias, scanning the room for a seating chart. A harried-looking wedding planner with a tablet stood near the entrance, directing guests. When I gave her my name, she frowned and scrolled through her list several times. Vance, that's odd. Let me check another list. A cold sense of foreboding crept up my spine as she continued searching, her frown deepening. Here we are. Elara Vance +1. You're it. Oh. Her professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing a flicker of discomfort, a quick dart of her eyes away from mine. Is there a problem? Elias asked, his voice calm but firm. No problem, just a moment please. She hurried away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving us standing awkwardly by the entrance. 5 uncomfortable minutes later, she returned with an older woman who introduced herself as the catering manager. Miss Vance, there seems to have been an oversight with the seating arrangements, she explained in a low voice, her tone apologetic but firm. The main reception tables are all filled to capacity now. I RSVP'd 2 months ago, I replied, my voice dangerously steady, a rising tide of disbelief and anger beginning to churn inside me. And I'm the groom's sister. The catering manager nodded apologetically. Yes, we understand. We've arranged alternative seating for you and your guest. Alternative seating, Elias repeated, his voice incredulous. If you'll follow me, please. Rather than leading us to any of the tables in the sprawling, opulent main reception area, she guided us through a side door and down a long, narrow hallway. The sounds of the celebration, the jazz band, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, grew more distant with each step, replaced by the clatter of pots and pans and the murmur of kitchen staff. Finally, she opened a swinging door to reveal the brightly lit, bustling kitchen, where staff in black and white uniforms bustled about preparing food, steam rising from massive pots, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and herbs. In the far corner, tucked almost out of sight behind a stack of serving trolleys, stood a small round table with 2 chairs, hastily covered with a white tablecloth. You can't be serious, I said, the heat of humiliation rising to my face, scalding my cheeks. My voice was a low whisper, barely audible above the kitchen din. This was a deliberate act. This was a calculated insult. I do apologize for the inconvenience, the manager replied, not quite meeting my eyes, her gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. The bride made some last-minute changes to accommodate important business associates. I am a business associate, I pointed out, my voice rising. Thorne Holdings just signed a $30 million contract with my company. I'm the CEO of Horizon Global. The manager looked genuinely confused, her professional facade faltering. I wasn't informed of that, Miss Vance. I'm just following the instructions I was given. Before she could continue, Cassandra appeared in the doorway, a champagne flute in hand, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed satisfaction as she surveyed the scene. Her perfect smile was back, sugary sweet. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice saccharine, dripping with false concern. "Yes, there's a problem," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady, to prevent the fury from erupting. "You've seated me and my guest in the kitchen. I'm your husband's sister." Cassandra took a slow, deliberate sip of her champagne before responding, her gaze sweeping over me with disdain. "We had to prioritize, Elara. Daddy's most important business associates and our close friends needed the premium tables. I'm sure you understand." The implication was clear. I was neither. "Actually, I don't understand," I countered, my voice hardening, the anger finally breaking through the thin veneer of my composure. "And I think Julian would be upset to know you've relegated his sister to the kitchen." Something cold and calculating flashed in Cassandra's eyes. A brief, ugly moment of triumph. "Julian approved the seating chart this morning," she said, her voice dropping to a low, triumphant purr. "He knows exactly where everyone is sitting." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. My own brother. He had agreed to this. He had sanctioned this humiliation. "This is completely inappropriate," Elias said firmly, his hand finding mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a show of quiet support. "We'll be joining the main reception." Cassandra's perfect mask slipped completely, revealing the raw contempt beneath. "The help eats in the kitchen," she sneered, gesturing dismissively towards the bustling staff. "You should feel right at home, considering your humble beginnings." The catering manager looked mortified, backing away from the confrontation. Several kitchen staff members paused in their work, pretending to be absorbed in their tasks, but their eyes darted towards us, listening, judging. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Decades of being diminished, overlooked, and now openly disrespected, crystallized into perfect clarity. I wouldn't cause a scene. I wouldn't lower myself to Cassandra's level. But I would no longer accept being treated as less than. "Elias," I said quietly, my voice surprisingly calm, almost eerily so. "I need a moment alone. Would you mind waiting for me outside?" He squeezed my hand in understanding, his gaze unwavering. "Take all the time you need. I'll be right outside." After they left, I stood alone in the bustling kitchen, invisible to my own family, yet responsible for a multi-million-dollar contract that would benefit the very people who couldn't bother to give me a seat at their table. The clatter and chatter of the kitchen staff faded into a dull roar in my ears. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The women's restroom off the main hallway was empty, thankfully. I locked myself in a stall, leaned against the cool door, and finally allowed the tears of humiliation to fall. I covered my mouth with my hand to muffle the sound, not wanting anyone who might enter to hear me breaking down. How had I deluded myself into believing this wedding would be different? That my success, my hard-won achievements, would finally earn me a place in my own family. The pattern was so clear now, stretching back through the years like a road map of dismissal and favoritism, a series of painful signposts leading to this moment. I remembered my 16th birthday when my parents forgot because Julian had a regional basketball championship the same weekend. They'd hastily bought a cake from the grocery store 3 days later, the candles sinking into melting frosting as they explained how proud they were of Julian's performance. Then there was my college graduation from MIT summa cum laude. My parents arrived an hour late, missing my speech as valedictorian, because Julian's fraternity had an alumni breakfast they couldn't possibly miss. They brought him along to my celebration dinner, where he dominated the conversation with stories about his summer internship at a friend's father's company. And the day I signed the lease on my first real office space for Horizon Global, a small, ambitious space that felt like the world to me, I'd called home bursting with pride, only to be told they couldn't talk long because they were hosting a barbecue to celebrate Julian's promotion to vice president at Vance & Sons, a title created specifically for him, despite his limited experience. Even today, on what should have been one of the happiest days for a family, I was literally being hidden away, deemed unworthy of sitting with important people, despite my own significant achievements. The raw injustice of it all hit me with the force of a physical blow. A gentle knock on the bathroom door startled me out of my thoughts. "Elara. It's Elias. Are you okay?" I wiped my eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath and opened the door. Elias stood there, concern etched across his handsome face, holding 2 flutes of champagne. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering me a glass. I accepted it gratefully, taking a long, fortifying sip of the cold, bubbly liquid. "I'm sorry you're witnessing this family dysfunction." He leaned against the wall beside me, his presence a comforting anchor. "Don't apologize. If anything, I'm getting a very illuminating look at what you've been dealing with your entire life. And yet you still came. Still hoping for, what exactly?" "I don't even know," I admitted, the words tasting bitter. "Acceptance. Recognition. The basic respect any person deserves from their family." "Those aren't unreasonable things to want, Elara," Elias suggested gently, his voice empathetic. I sipped my champagne again, considering his words. "The thing is, I don't actually need their approval anymore. I built Horizon Global without their support. I have a team that respects me, clients who value what I've created, and friends who see me for who I really am." I glanced at him. "I have you." "You certainly do," he confirmed with a warm smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "So, what do you want to do? We can leave right now, get dinner somewhere else, maybe catch a movie. Pretend this whole wedding fiasco never happened." My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out to see Dr. Eris Thorne's name on the screen. "I should take this," I said, straightening, my professional instincts kicking in. "It's the head of innovation from Thorne Holdings." Elias nodded and stepped away to give me privacy. "Hello, Eris. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Elara. Just wanted to confirm our meeting next week about the Phase 2 implementation, and to let you know the first payment for the contract was processed this morning. $30 million, right on schedule." As Eris continued discussing technical details, a powerful realization dawned on me. I wasn't powerless here. I had built something valuable, something even Marcus Thorne, a man of immense influence, couldn't dismiss. And while I couldn't change how my family saw me, I could absolutely change how I responded to their treatment, how I allowed myself to be treated. "Eris, can I call you back in about 20 minutes? I interrupted, my voice firm. "I'm actually at the Vance wedding right now." "Oh, I didn't realize you were attending." "Course, Elara, enjoy the celebration. We can talk Monday." After hanging up, I turned to find Elias watching me with curiosity, a question in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" he asked, recognizing the subtle but profound shift in my demeanor. "I'm thinking that I've spent my entire life hoping my family would recognize my worth," I replied, surprising even myself with how calm and resolute I felt. "But maybe it's time I recognized it myself and acted accordingly." "What does that mean exactly?" he prompted, a hint of excitement in his voice. I smoothed my dress and checked my reflection in the mirror, wiping away the last traces of tears. My eyes, though still red-rimmed, held a new, steely determination. "It means I'm not going to hide in the kitchen like I'm ashamed of who I am. It means I'm going to walk back into that reception with my head held high. And it means I'm going to make a business decision based on how I've been treated, not on family obligation." Elias's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. "The Thorne contract." "Exactly," I affirmed, my voice a whisper of steel. "Marcus Thorne wants the benefits of my company's software, but his daughter and my brother think I'm only worthy of sitting with the kitchen staff. That's not a business relationship I want to maintain." "Are you sure about this, Elara? It's a $30 million contract," he cautioned, his concern for me evident. I took a deep breath, calculating exactly what this would mean for Horizon Global. Yes, the Thorne contract was significant, monumental even, but it wasn't our only major client. We had diversified well over the past 2 years, securing contracts with other major cities and developers. Losing the Thorne contract would hurt, certainly, but it wouldn't devastate us. And the message it would send, the precedent it would set, was worth far more than the money. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied, meeting his gaze directly. I deserve better than this, both personally and professionally. And it's time everyone understood that. Elias smiled slowly, a genuine, proud smile. Then I'm with you. Whatever you decide to do. We walked back toward the reception together, my mind clear and my purpose defined. For the first time that day, I felt a profound sense of peace, not because I was about to retaliate, but because I was finally valuing myself enough to establish boundaries, even with family. Just outside the reception tent, I paused, watching through the opening as Julian and Cassandra moved from table to table, greeting guests. They stopped at the head table, where Marcus Thorne sat with several distinguished-looking men in expensive suits, all laughing and raising glasses in a toast. "That's where I should be sitting," I said quietly, a statement of fact, not in plea. Not because I'm Julian's sister, but because I'm the CEO of a company that Thorne Holdings desperately needs to achieve their ambitious goals. "Then let's make sure they understand exactly who they decided to seat in the kitchen," Elias replied, offering me his arm. With my head held high and my decision made, I stepped back into the reception, no longer seeking approval, but ready to command the respect I'd earned. "You certainly do," he confirmed with a warm smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "So, what do you want to do? We can leave right now, get dinner somewhere else, maybe catch a movie. Pretend this whole wedding fiasco never happened." My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out to see Dr. Eris Thorne's name on the screen. "I should take this," I said, straightening, my professional instincts kicking in. "It's the head of innovation from Thorne Holdings." Elias nodded and stepped away to give me privacy. "Hello, Eris. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Elara. Just wanted to confirm our meeting next week about the Phase 2 implementation, and to let you know the first payment for the contract was processed this morning. $30 million, right on schedule." As Eris continued discussing technical details, a powerful realization dawned on me. I wasn't powerless here. I had built something valuable, something even Marcus Thorne, a man of immense influence, couldn't dismiss. And while I couldn't change how my family saw me, I could absolutely change how I responded to their treatment, how I allowed myself to be treated. "Eris, can I call you back in about 20 minutes? I interrupted, my voice firm. "I'm actually at the Thorne Vance wedding right now." "Oh, I didn't realize you were attending." "Course, Elara, enjoy the celebration. We can talk Monday." After hanging up, I turned to find Elias watching me with curiosity, a question in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" he asked, recognizing the subtle but profound shift in my demeanor. "I'm thinking that I've spent my entire life hoping my family would recognize my worth," I replied, surprising even myself with how calm and resolute I felt. "But maybe it's time I recognized it myself and acted accordingly." "What does that mean exactly?" he prompted, a hint of excitement in his voice. I smoothed my dress and checked my reflection in the mirror, wiping away the last traces of tears. My eyes, though still red-rimmed, held a new, steely determination. "It means I'm not going to hide in the kitchen like I'm ashamed of who I am. It means I'm going to walk back into that reception with my head held high. And it means I'm going to make a business decision based on how I've been treated, not on family obligation." Elias's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. "The Thorne contract." "Exactly," I affirmed, my voice a whisper of steel. "Marcus Thorne wants the benefits of my company's software, but his daughter and my brother think I'm only worthy of sitting with the kitchen staff. That's not a business relationship I want to maintain." "Are you sure about this, Elara? It's a $30 million contract," he cautioned, his concern for me evident. I took a deep breath, calculating exactly what this would mean for Horizon Global. Yes, the Thorne contract was significant, monumental even, but it wasn't our only major client. We had diversified well over the past 2 years, securing contracts with other major cities and developers. Losing the Thorne contract would hurt, certainly, but it wouldn't devastate us. And the message it would send, the precedent it would set, was worth far more than the money. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied, meeting his gaze directly. I deserve better than this, both personally and professionally. And it's time everyone understood that. Elias smiled slowly, a genuine, proud smile. Then I'm with you. Whatever you decide to do. We walked back toward the reception together, my mind clear and my purpose defined. For the first time that day, I felt a profound sense of peace, not because I was about to retaliate, but because I was finally valuing myself enough to establish boundaries, even with family. Just outside the reception tent, I paused, watching through the opening as Julian and Cassandra moved from table to table, greeting guests. They stopped at the head table, where Marcus Thorne sat with several distinguished-looking men in expensive suits, all laughing and raising glasses in a toast. That's where I should be sitting, I said quietly, a statement of fact, not an plea. Not because I'm Julian's sister, but because I'm the CEO of a company that Thorne Holdings desperately needs to achieve their ambitious goals. Then let's make sure they understand exactly who they decided to seat in the kitchen, Elias replied, offering me his arm. With my head held high and my decision made, I stepped back into the reception, no longer seeking approval, but ready to command the respect I'd earned. Refusing to match her emotional outburst, I simply decided I wasn't going to accept that treatment any longer. As Marcus led Julian away, with Cassandra following closely behind, Elias placed his hand on the small of my back. That, he said quietly, a slow smile spreading across his face, was the most professionally executed takedown I've ever witnessed. For the first time that day, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face, not one forced or polite, but one born of liberation. Let's get out of here, I suddenly declared, the weight of the evening lifting. I suddenly have a taste for real food, preferably somewhere where I can sit at an actual table. As we turned to leave, several of the business associates from the head table approached me, business cards appearing from inside suit jackets. Miss Vance, Thomas Harrington, CityWorks Development, one man began, extending his hand. I'd be very interested in learning more about what Horizon Global has to offer. Another man stepped forward. Gerald Winters, Apex Investments. I've been following your company's growth. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting next week. The very people Marcus and Julian had been courting were now approaching me directly, their previous disinterest replaced by overt admiration. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't feel any particular satisfaction from it. This wasn't about revenge or one-upmanship. It was about standing up for myself and my company's value, about asserting my worth when others refused to acknowledge it. I accepted their cards politely but didn't linger. My assistant will be in touch to arrange meetings, but right now I'm afraid I need to leave. As Elias and I walked out of the tent, the sounds of raised voices could be heard coming from the direction Marcus had taken Julian and Cassandra. The perfect wedding was unraveling, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly whole. The drive away from the Thorne estate felt like an escape, a quiet liberation. The opulent mansion, which had seemed so grand and intimidating just hours before, now dwindled in my rearview mirror, a symbol of everything I no longer craved. Elias drove, his presence a comforting silence, broken only by the soft hum of the electric car and the distant sounds of the ocean. My phone buzzed with notifications, a mix of texts from worried Horizon Global team members who had undoubtedly heard whispers of the contract termination, and a few frantic calls from my mother. I ignored them all. Not out of spite, but because for the first time I felt truly in control, my decisions guided by my own values, not by a desperate need for external validation. We found a quiet, dimly lit seafood restaurant a few towns over. The kind of place with red checkered tablecloths and the comforting scent of garlic and butter. Sitting across from Elias, sharing a plate of steamed mussels, felt infinitely more fulfilling than any seat at that head table could have been. You know, Elias said, breaking a comfortable silence, what you did back there. That took immense courage. Most people wouldn't have dared to walk away from a deal like that, especially when it was tangled up with family. I took a slow breath, the aroma of the ocean on the plate, a pleasant contrast to the cloying scent of white roses from the wedding. It wasn't just a deal, Elias. It was a mirror. showed me unequivocally how they truly saw me. And I realized I couldn't allow that perception to dictate my worth, or the worth of Horizon Global. "So what happens now?" he asked, his gaze steady, curious. "Now," I replied, a slow smile spreading across my face, "I go into the office Monday morning and officially terminate the contract. It'll be a clean break. And then I focus on the clients who do value what we do, who see the vision, who respect the hard work." I thought of Thomas Harrington, the CityWorks development executive, and Gerald Winters from Apex Investments. Those were the connections that mattered, forged through respect, not obligation. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Monday morning I was at the Horizon Global office before sunrise. My legal team had already prepared the termination paperwork based on my initial call. The atmosphere in the office was a mix of nervous energy and fierce loyalty. They knew the magnitude of the Thorn contract, but they also knew me. They trusted my leadership. "Are you absolutely certain, Elara?" my head of legal, David Kim, asked, his voice grave as he placed the final documents in front of me. "This is unprecedented. It could send a ripple through the industry." "I'm certain, David," I replied, my voice unwavering. "This isn't just a business decision. It's a statement of our values. Horizon Global stands for innovation, integrity, and respect. When a partner, regardless of their power or influence, demonstrates such a blatant disregard for those values, we cannot continue the partnership. It would compromise everything we've built." I signed the documents, the pen scratching a definitive line through the $30 million deal. It felt like severing a cord, a painful but necessary amputation. The immediate financial hit was mitigated by our strong pipeline of other projects, but the message it sent was invaluable. News travels fast in the world of high finance and urban development. By midday my phone was ringing off the hook. Marcus Thorne himself was the first. His voice was cold, controlled, laced with barely contained fury. "Elara, what in God's name are you doing? Canceling a contract of this magnitude over a seating arrangement. This is utterly unprofessional." "Mr. Thorne," I replied, keeping my voice calm, professional, and entirely devoid of emotion. "It was not about a seating arrangement. It was about a fundamental lack of respect, demonstrated not only by your daughter's actions but by Julian's complicity. When a CEO of a partner company is deliberately humiliated and hidden away, it speaks volumes about the value you place on genuine partnership and the integrity of your organization. Horizon Global cannot align itself with such practices. The contract is terminated. Our legal team will handle the specifics." He sputtered, demanding to speak to my board, threatening legal action. I calmly informed him that I was the sole founder and CEO, and the decision was mine alone. "You underestimate me, Mr. Thorne," I said, a quiet strength in my voice. "And that, ultimately, was your biggest mistake." I hung up before he could respond further. The next calls were from Julian and my parents. Julian was incoherent, alternating between panicked apologies and furious accusations. "How could you, Elara? You ruined everything. This was my chance. My promotion. You always have to make it about you." "Julian," I interrupted, my voice flat. "This isn't about me. This is about accountability. You knew about my company, you knew about the contract, and you willingly participated in a scheme to humiliate me on your wedding day. You made your choice. Now you live with the consequences." He continued to shout, but I simply disconnected the call. There was nothing more to say. My mother's call was different. Her voice was strained, laced with a familiar blend of worry and thinly veiled accusation. "Elara, darling, what have you done? Your father is furious. Marcus Thorne is threatening to pull all future business from Vance and Sons. Julian's promotion is on hold. You've embarrassed us all." "Mother," I said, my voice tired but firm, "I'm not the one who embarrassed anyone. Their actions speak for themselves. You and Father stood by, you actively perpetuated a narrative that belittled my achievements for decades. You prioritized Julian's perceived success, even when it meant denying mine. And Julian, on his own wedding day, willingly participated in an act of outright humiliation. This is the culmination of years of that very treatment. She was silent for a long moment, a rare occurrence. Then a hesitant, almost broken voice. But your career, the money, was it worth it? It was worth it, Mother, I replied, looking out my office window at the bustling city below, a city I was helping to design, to build, to make more intelligent and sustainable. Because for the first time I stood up for myself, for Horizon Global, and for every person who has ever been made to feel invisible by the very people who should have celebrated them. That's worth more than any contract. I could hear my father's booming voice in the background, shouting something about betrayal and ungratefulness. My mother sighed. Your father, he just doesn't understand. He doesn't have to, I said, a sense of peace settling over me. I do. I ended the call. Repercussions and recognition. The immediate repercussions were swift and severe for the Vance and Thorne families. News of the cancelled $30 million contract, and the scandalous reason behind it, spread like wildfire through the industry. Marcus Thorne, a man accustomed to flawless public relations, found his image tarnished. His attempts to dismiss the incident as a misunderstanding or a personal family dispute fell flat when stories began circulating about the kitchen table humiliation. Thorne Holdings faced scrutiny, with some industry analysts questioning the judgment of a company that would treat a vital technology partner with such blatant disrespect. Julian, once the golden boy, saw his fast-track promotion at Vance & Sons frozen indefinitely. The dream of leading the combined Thorne-Vance enterprise evaporated. The shame of being exposed for lying to his powerful father-in-law, coupled with his complicity in my humiliation, left him publicly chastened and professionally isolated. Vance & Sons, heavily reliant on the Thorne partnership for their expansion, found themselves in a precarious position, their reputation bruised. My parents, caught in the crossfire, faced an uncomfortable social reckoning. Their carefully cultivated image as respected pillars of the Oakhaven elite, elevated by the Thorne connection, crumbled under the weight of the scandal. Society friends who had once flocked to their side suddenly became distant, unsure how to navigate the very public fallout. My mother, in particular, seemed to shrivel under the sudden spotlight of disapproval. Her calls to me becoming less accusatory and more mournful, filled with laments about social slights and whispered gossip. My father retreated into a furious silence, unable to reconcile my decisive action with the compliant daughter he always expected. But for Horizon Global, the ripple David Kim had warned about turned into a wave of unexpected opportunity. The story, framed not as a petty family squabble but as a principled stand against corporate disrespect, resonated deeply within the tech and design communities. My phone, which had buzzed with furious calls from the Vances and Thornes, now overflowed with messages of support and genuine interest. Thomas Harrington from CityWorks Development was true to his word. Within days, his assistant was in touch, eager to schedule a meeting. When we met, it wasn't just a formal pitch. It was a conversation between two professionals who respected each other's vision. Elara, he said, leaning forward across the polished conference table, what you did at that wedding, it was bold. But it showed me something crucial about your character and the values of your company. Integrity. That's rare in this business. We're looking for long-term partners who prioritize that. CityWorks Development, a major player in urban renewal across the Northeast, signed a significant contract with Horizon Global a month later. A deal that, while not as immediately large as the Thorne one, represented a more strategic and truly respectful partnership. Gerald Winters of Apex Investments followed suit. He wasn't just interested in our growth. He was interested in my story. Miss Vance, he told me during our meeting at his high-rise office in Manhattan, your company has demonstrated not just technological brilliance, but an unwavering commitment to its principles. That kind of leadership, that kind of self-respect, is a powerful indicator of long-term success. We want to invest in that. Apex Investments became a key strategic investor, providing capital that allowed Horizon Global to accelerate its expansion plans, hire more top talent, and pursue even more ambitious projects. The industry didn't just understand my decision. Many applauded it. Articles in leading business magazines highlighted Horizon Global as a rising star, a company that prioritized values over mere profit. I was invited to speak at major tech conferences, not just about our software but about leadership, integrity, and standing firm in your convictions. My name, once whispered with dismissive pity by my family, was now spoken with respect and admiration by industry giants. Months passed. Horizon Global thrived. Our projects expanded, our team grew, and my days were filled with the challenging, rewarding work of building the future. I hadn't heard directly from Julian or my parents in a long time, only through distant relatives who occasionally dropped vague hints about their difficulties. Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, as I was leaving my office in Boston, I saw him. Julian. He was standing across the street, near a coffee shop, looking older, thinner, a shadow of his former confident self. He saw me too. For a long moment, we simply stood there, separated by the street, the bustling city, and years of unspoken pain. I braced myself for an argument, for a plea, for anything. But he just stood there, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on me, a profound sadness in his eyes. Finally he spoke, his voice barely audible over the city noise. Elara. Just my name. No accusation, no anger, just a quiet resignation. Julian, I replied, my voice gentle. I messed up, he said, the words a raw, painful confession. I'm sorry. For everything. For the wedding. For always pushing you down. He gestured vaguely at my sleek office building. I saw your company. What you built. Incredible. You were right all along. It wasn't the dramatic apology I might have once craved, but it was genuine. It was stripped of ego, devoid of the usual bluster. It was just Julian, admitting a truth that had been too long denied. The weight I hadn't even realized I was still carrying, a tiny, almost invisible shard of hope for his recognition, finally dissolved. I know, Julian, I said, a faint smile touching my lips. I know. I didn't need his validation anymore, but hearing it, finally, was a quiet balm to old wounds. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing in particular, just the mundane details of our lives. There was no grand reconciliation, no sudden return to childhood closeness. The chasm remained, but now it felt less like a gaping wound and more like a gentle, unbridgeable distance. We were different people on different paths, but there was finally a mutual respect. My parents, too, eventually reached out, not with apologies, but with a newfound, hesitant acknowledgement. My mother started sending me articles about Horizon Global, articles she'd once dismissed as computer stuff, with little notes attached. So proud, darling. My father, in his own gruff way, occasionally sent me emails, ostensibly about industry news, but subtly laced with questions about my business strategy or comments that revealed a grudging respect for my achievements. They hadn't fully changed their ingrained patterns, but the shift was undeniable. They had been forced to see me, not as the hobbyist daughter, but as the successful CEO, the force to be reckoned with. The future built on my terms. Looking back, that day at Julian and Cassandra's wedding was less about a cancelled contract and more about a declaration of independence. It was the moment I stopped waiting for my family to see my worth and started actively defining it for myself. It was the moment I realized that true belonging isn't found in a carefully assigned seat at a family table, but in the unwavering belief in yourself and the unwavering support of those who truly see you. Horizon Global continues to thrive. We're breaking ground on new projects across the globe, designing intelligent, sustainable cities that were once just dreams in my mind. My team is brilliant, dedicated, and diverse, a true reflection of the values I hold dear. Elias and I are still together, our relationship built on mutual respect, shared ambition, and a deep understanding of each other's journeys. He reminds me that the best foundations are built on solid ground, not on shifting sands of conditional love. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my office late at night, I look out at the city lights, the sprawling urban landscape that is both my canvas and my legacy. I think of that small table in a bustling kitchen, a moment of profound humiliation that transformed into a catalyst for undeniable triumph. I realize that the greatest victory wasn't in proving them wrong, but in proving myself right. It wasn't about earning their approval. It was about earning my own. And that, I've learned, is the only approval that truly matters. My story isn't about revenge. It's about recognizing your own value, even when others don't, and building a life so authentically yours that no one can ever make you feel invisible again. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when your worth was questioned? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, give this video a like and subscribe for more content about finding your voice and building your own path. Thank you for watching.